The world that I want to live in is where foster care is really like an extended community system that operates in the aspirational way that we all want, where we say we all have each other.
As foster parents, adoptive parents, kinship caregivers, being trauma-informed really is essential to making sure that the kids in your home have the care that they need. When I first started as a kinship caregiver initially, I knew nothing about trauma, and so I misinterpreted a lot of my children's behaviors as defiance, as disobedience, as just not wanting to be there, as a break in our relationship, instead of acknowledging their behaviors for what they were, which were trauma responses. And until I really became trauma informed, I didn't know how to effectively meet their needs.
The thing that makes for a really great resource parent is a resource parent who feels comfortable in what they've been educated around in terms of the needs of parenting children who come out of congregate care or foster placement, because parenting a child with those experiences is very different than parenting a child who has not had those experiences. And so there's a lot of education needs around understanding neurodevelopmental trauma and how that impacts the brain, and in turn what those behaviors might look like based on that.
This foster mother that I lived with was the perfect foster mother for me. The reason why I say that is because she loved me unconditionally. She showed me that she cared. But because of my behavior and the lack of resources of the parent, of the foster parent, knowing how to help me with my behaviors, or in the instances of me acting out or whatever the case may be that interrupted at home, that lack of resources put me into a group home or in a residential placement, because they thought that these behaviors was my fault, and that, oh, the answer is let's go into a residential placement that's going to fix your problems.
It's really important to help caregivers, whether it's foster parent, a family member, or a residential caregiver, understand that those behaviors are not willful, or they're not intentional. Most of the time they're really kind of in a reaction to what they're experiencing as something that could be threatening, or something that causes emotional response to cause them to be dysregulated. So misunderstanding those cues a lot of times can lead to frustration on the caregiver's part, and ultimately can kind of lead to caregivers to say, you know what, I can't manage this child needs more than what I can give.
If the idea is that our foster parents and our kinship caregivers, if they are the most powerful and most important intervention that foster care can provide to healing and thriving when we have to remove a child from their family and there's no other option, then, what do we really need to do to support those families to have everything that they need to be able to provide excellent parenting to that child?
When we look at bridging this gap between the biological parents and the resource parents, is making sure that we continue to not look at what's on paper, that we try to bridge that gap and remember that we're not our mistakes, we're not what's on paper, that you're a resource parents are a resource to help these families be successful and strive.
We know that kids have connections to their schools, to their teachers, to their friends, and so we're looking for families who are willing to help kids keep all of those connections and make sure that they have that community of support around them still, even during the time that they're physically living in it, which is a really different task, I think, than it was 20 years ago.
Too often entry into foster care results in loss for children of the things that sort of hold and ground them to who they are. And I certainly think of that in my own experience. I lost the ability to speak Spanish while I was in foster care, and that has impacted my own self-identity as a Latina woman. It's impacted the way the Latino community holds and accepts and embraces me. It just was an afterthought, I think, when I was in foster care. There was no intentional commitment to really make sure that that part of who I was was affirmed and celebrated.
Wisconsin was one of the first states to codify the Wisconsin Indian Child Welfare Act. We believe strongly that children need to be connected to their tribes first, and have been partnering with the tribes for a long time on the tribal recruitment effort that really was generated through their work, and just supporting.
When kids and youth are placed in foster care, a lot of times, far too often, they are removed from their communities of origin, from their language, from their culture, from the foods that their family eats, from their religion. They're often placed in homes where their own gender identity or sexual orientation are not honored, and that their wishes are not upheld. And all of these things have really lasting negative effects on kids.
That it is the science that tells us that parenting is the most important intervention that we can offer to any child or youth, period. And for those youth who have experienced trauma, abuse, and neglect, it becomes even more important and powerful. So every single moment that a child is not getting parented should be an emergency in foster care. And every single moment that a child is receiving excellent, loving parenting in foster care, it is actually, we're sort of delivering them the secret sauce of what it's going to take to help them grow into a healthy and happy adult.